achieved.
I certainly have a bit of a soft spot for the type of fighter who has a great career, has a solid run, gets close to title contention, and then falls short. Not even of winning a championship, but ultimately contending for a championship, getting that high-profile fight. Guys that come to mind are Jim Miller at lightweight, Jake Ellenberger at welterweight, guys that had very good careers, were on the cusp, just couldn't quite get there. Jacare Souza, more recently, we've seen have that issue as well, and now we can add Rafael Assunção to that category. He had a fantastic push through the bantamweight division, included a victory over TJ Dillashaw, but his loss to Dillashaw slowed him down. He got back in the win category and started picking up big wins, but you can see that a loss at 36 years of age and a loss to Marlon Moraes in the fashion that he lost to him has probably knocked him out of title contention, especially when you consider how deep that division is. And you know, I understand also that he's a bit of a bland fighter. He's not the type who people are clamoring to see, especially with his style, but he's effective. And if we're going to promote this fight as a sport, he should have earned a title shot at some point in time. You know, ultimately this fight precluded him. I would have to say he won this fight, especially if he finished Moraes. He should have been the next in line. He didn't win it. He's out of contention as far as I'm concerned. It's unfortunate. It's the nature of the sport, but still it's worth noting some of these guys that just can't quite get there. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming February 10th pay-per-view, UFC 234, live from Melbourne, Australia. I'll be giving you my 5 main card predictions on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. The event is headlined by Robert Whittaker, defending his middleweight title against Kelvin Gastelum. We get the return of Anderson Silva, taking on the meteoric rising Israel Adesanya, also in the middleweight division. The winner of that fight arguably gets the next title shot. That's very exciting for me. It's almost like a mirror match, a coming of ages. We'll see what happens there. I'm coming off a show I went 5-8 overall, and so far this year I'm 13-13. Not an impressive start. I'm making some adjustments, and I've changed some of the technology I use when breaking down fights to help me give better looks at fighters and better looks at fights while I'm doing my research. So we'll see if that pans out. But my bet packs, even though I went 5-8, they actually produced. I had Marlon Moraes as my #1 play in the gold pack. In my bronze plays, I won both. I had Marcus Perez straight up, and then I had Damian Maia and Rosenstrike, Jairzinho, I can't say that right, Rosenstrike to win parlay together. And if you go down to my bronze play in the CBC betting cluster, I had Perez, Maia, and Rosenstrike together. Now, we would have won some significant cash, big cash. It would have been a huge night had Renato Souza picked up a submission victory. I had 2 bets that came down to her basically not getting the submission, so it would have been a nice night that way. A couple other ones, Max Griffin, of course, losing a decision didn't help, but you know, it was one of those nights where things just didn't go right. And a couple of the picks, like my read on Justin Ledet was completely off, and Walker looked fantastic, putting him away. Either way, we got to buckle down here and end a little of a slump, and we're hopefully going to do it in this show. So if you're looking to buy the bet packs, $15, or you can subscribe for the next 3 and save yourself a little bit of cash. I'm going to give you a bigger gap there, maybe make you save $15 if you buy the next 3. That'll basically, it's 1 for free. That's what we're looking at. You can also follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions if you're looking there. And, of course, check out my website for articles. I'm posting several articles. Recently, I've added an article called where I look at the top contenders in the UFC's light heavyweight division. I'm looking at one possibly talking about the Moraes-Dillashaw fight that needs to happen. We'll, if I can get that posted. Also, actually, I'm coming off a huge Super Bowl weekend. I picked the New England Patriots to cover and the under. I didn't expect it to be as low scoring as the game was, but at the same time, I felt it had potential to be something in that category. So I cashed in huge, and I did promote on my site a bet with the Patriots and covering the spread and the under. My suggested betting amount was $150, which paid back $546.69. The unfortunate part is the Washington Capitals, who I paired on a couple of other little bets. I thought they beat the Bruins. They lost 1-0. They beat the Bruins 14 straight times, and they probably should have. The Bruins just got the bounces in this, but I'm a Bruins fan, so those 2 bets obviously didn't come through, but either way, it was still a winning weekend as far as my NFL picks were concerned. So on that note, let's get to our first main card prediction. Fight number 1 of the main card takes place in the UFC's middleweight division as the undefeated Australian Jimmy Crute, 8-0, takes on the late notice injury replacement Smilin' Sam Alvey with a current record of 33 wins, 11 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, Alvey is replacing Ryan Spann on roughly a week's notice. Coming to this fight, he's fighting at light heavyweight. He formerly fought at middleweight. He currently has a 2-1 record since moving up to 205. He's coming out of a TKO loss to Little Nog, and he has split decision victory over Jean Vallante prior to that. For Crute, he had a submission victory over Paul Craig in his official UFC debut. It came right at the end of round 3 in a very back-and-forth fight that he could have lost on the scorecards. He won a contenders bout to get the nod to get to call the UFC, and he is undefeated. It's a good, solid little record, and he's fighting at home. He's from Australia. Those are all huge advantages for him. Physically, both men 6'2", 1 inch reach advantage for Alvey. Crute is the younger man by 10 years. He's also fighting at home, as I said, and he's fighting on a full camp where Alvey certainly is not. Now, Crute, one of the things that stands out right away, he's got good jiu-jitsu, or at least that's what his record would suggest. He's a BJJ brown belt, 3 wins by submission. He also has 3 knockout victories and 3 decision wins, so split evenly 3 ways. Now, of his decision wins, 2 of them went a 5 full rounds, which is very rare for a young fighter to see that type of experience, which is a good thing. As far as in the cage, he's very aggressive. He likes to press the action. On his contenders bout, he was overextending at times. He had a lot of nervous energy. Leaping in, he was getting tagged with some big shots. He was also landing some big shots when doing that, and taking damage, going back and forth. He landed a hard 1-2 and a buzzing head kick that ultimately ended the fight, got his opponent standing, and the referee shut it down. When he fought Craig, he pressured him early, but he was taken down. He did sweep off his back, but he lost some of those rounds on his back as a result. He's very physically strong. He likes to engage, but he's young, he's raw, and he's prone to making mistakes. When he strikes, he's always looking for that big shot. He gets a little bit wide and opens up with his guard. He's an offense-first fighter. Now, looking at Sam Alvey, he's coming off his 2nd career knockout loss. His first was back against Derek Brunson, and he followed that up with a tentative decision against Elias Theodoro. It was the only time he's lost back-to-back fights in his career, so there is potential here that he could come out a little bit gun-shy and lose a decision as well. He can be backed up on the feet, which is a good thing for a guy like Crute who wants to pressure. But at the same time, when Alvey backs up, he sets his feet and he throws. He threw a beautiful counter right against another aggressive opponent in Marcin Prachnio that hurt him, and then a second time when he came in with his hands down looking ridiculous, it finished him. He's got some decent leg kicks, which we like to see more of. He really does well to attack that ankle. Again, in the Prachnio fight, he had success taking his balance away. In decision wins, and we've seen a lot of that for Alvey recently, he doesn't land a ton of volume, but he stays busy. He's got excellent takedown defense, which is a key component here, as it should remove Crute's jiu-jitsu from the equation. The massive experience advantage also huge for Alvey. He has more decision losses, or almost more decision losses, than Crute has fights overall. So that's worth noting there. The decision losses are a concern for Alvey, especially if he can't. I think he's 11-8 in decisions overall. They are a concern if he can't put up enough to convince the judges he has won this fight. It's also worth noting he's fighting again in enemy territory on short notice. Those are all things that go against him. He has acknowledged he has to push more in case he can't get the knockout and has to be more decisive with his offense. Crute's super aggressive and wild. That can be effective against a lot of fighters, but Alvey's actually going to like that. He's going to let him wade forward, and then he's going to look to counterstrike. Alvey can't let Crute outwork him. That's a factor here, but if he gets tired and the fight gets sloppy, that could actually favor Sam Alvey. Alvey will make him work hard for takedowns, hurt him with counter strikes, landing more impactful strikes overall. Again, Alvey can't afford to let Crute do more. He needs to stay busy-o. The cardio is a factor here for Alvey on short notice if this fight goes deep. I like the veteran savvy. I like the fact that Sam Alvey's a southpaw, which could throw a young fighter like Jim Crute off. The short notice opponent change could be an issue for Crute as well. I think Crute moves forward. Watch for that counter, maybe counter right hand from Sam Alvey, and my prediction is Sam Alvey to defeat Jimmy Crute by knockout. Our second fight on the pay-per-view is in the UFC's flyweight division as the 14th-ranked Montana De La Rosa, 9-4-0, takes on Australia's Nadia Kassem. Now, Kassem is returning off a 15-month layoff. She won her debut over Alex Chambers. She missed weight at fighting at strawweight 5 pounds, so this jump in weight seems appropriate for her. De La Rosa comes in having won 3 consecutive fights, 2 inside the octagon, and her 2 losses prior to this current winning streak were against Mackenzie Dern and Cynthia Calvillo. So no real issues with losing to those type of fighters. For De La Rosa, she's 2 inches taller. She'll have a 2-inch reach advantage. They are the same age. Experience favors De La Rosa despite being the same age. She has 13 pro fights, just 5 for Kassem, and she also has her Ultimate Fighter experience to rely on. So those are big scenarios and advantages for Montana. Now, Kassem's debut, when you look at her record, it was her first non-first round knockout victory. In fact, most of her wins on the regional scene happened in the opening stages of the first round. It was also her first opponent that she ever faced in her career that had a win on her record. Her 4 previous pre-UFC opponents had a combined record of 0-11, so not exactly fighting high-level opposition. Now, Chambers, the girl she beat, I like Alex Chambers, but she's not a world beater. Overall, she's gone 1-4 inside the octagon. Her total pro record is 5-5, and coming to that fight, she hadn't fought in 26 months. And she's 17 years older than Nadia, so certainly not a great spot for Chambers, and Kassem was able to capitalize, but couldn't get the finish, ultimately went the distance. Overall, or looking at De La Rosa, she has submitted each of her last 3 opponents, and again, her 2 losses came in recent action came against fighters with a combined record of 14-1. So that's a quality record as far as I'm concerned. De La Rosa has fought better, and she has more experience, better experience and more experience. Plus, she's 7-3 outside the first round, so she has lots of experience beyond the first frame. Now, Kassem is a Muay Thai-based fighter, lots of kicks and knees in her offense. She likes to maintain pressure. She landed 52 strikes against Chambers, gave up 45, but more importantly, she gave up 4 takedowns in 7 attempts from Alex Chambers, especially the first round. She was giving up ground looking to counter, but ultimately when Chambers got her hands on her, she took her down and spent a lot of the early action on her back. De La Rosa, when striking, uses her reach well, but most likely she's not going to want to strike here. She's going on to utilize her wrestling and her grappling to expose what Kassem seems to be most vulnerable to. If De La Rosa does strike, her volume against Ostovich was decent, but again, I don't anticipate that going to be the case. She can attack off her back. She has several armbar victories, but again, she doesn't want to give up position. Look for her to close the distance, clinch, land takedowns. De La Rosa could find success on the wall, beating her up, but again, I think she wants to go to a spot where she is going to be most successful. That spot should be on the mat. Once she gets the fight to the floor, De La Rosa is going to transitions together, chain submission attempts together, and eventually get something, probably by rear naked choke is my guess, and my prediction is Montana De La Rosa to defeat Nadia Kassem by submission. Hitting the midway mark of the main card, we are in the UFC's bantamweight division as Yahya, the 15th ranked fighter in the division, 26 wins and 9 losses with 1 no contest, takes on the United States' Ricky Simón with a current record of 10 wins and 1 defeat. Now, Yahya's record has been absolutely unreal. It's gone relatively unnoticed, but it's been very impressive. 7-1 in his last 8 fights, including 5 submission victories. He only has 2 losses over his last 13 UFC fights. That's damn impressive. For Simón, he has won 7 in a row. He's 2-0 inside the octagon. He did have that opening, that debut, that controversial debut victory, catching his opponent by submission, time expiring, and the referee calling it after the bell, which, hey, I get it, but again, is very close, very controversial, probably loses a decision on the scorecards. Physically, both men 5'6", 2-inch reach advantage for Simón, and he is the younger fighter by 8 years. Now, Yahya is an elite-level BJJ, black belt, and specialist, grappling specialist. That's his focus. We're seeing less and less of that in UFC. We just saw what Maia was capable of. Yahya falls into that same category. 20 of his 26 pro wins have come by submission. He averages 7.67 takedowns per fight, has taken down 12 of his 14 UFC opponents. His last fight he won by heel hook, didn't record a takedown. That's one of those 2 takedown fights that he did not get his opponent to the mat. When you look at his overall approach, he can either complete a lot of takedowns and grind a decision, or possibly tire his opponent later in the fights and get a submission, or he can land 1 takedown and shut his opponent down with a sub early in the fight. Chad Mendes is the only man to successfully defeat him by not giving up a takedown. That happened all the way back in 2011 and happened at featherweight. Yahya goes up and down. He's had success at both. Now, Hani is deceptively strong. He doesn't look like much, but he's very strong. If he gets his hands on you, he pulls you into the clinch. He's overwhelming with his grappling game, transitions, and just smothering from top position. He can strike. It's actually improved. But again, he's always looking to try and close that distance and set up his grappling attack. The big issue with the Brazilian is his cardio. He usually can go a solid 2 rounds before he gasses out and then hold on for the 3rd round for a decision. He's durable. We haven't seen him really beat up and busted up in recent fights. It's just he survives. He's exhausted by the end, but he gets his hand raised because of what he did early in that fight. And the big question is, can Ricky Simón survive early on? He's very active. He has power. He has lots of movement. He's a better athlete overall. His striking's pretty good. His volume isn't amazing. Let's put it this way. He's actually been outlanded in both of his fights in the UFC, and had to go to some different areas to pick up the victory. Ultimately, against Jackson, he relied on takedowns. He relied on his wrestling. He went to the ground 7 times, landed 7 takedowns against Jackson. Yahya's not a great grappler off his back. At least it's not his forte. He's very capable. It's just he wants to be in top position. But you have to wonder, is Simón even going to consider going to the ground in this fight? I would anticipate no. Tom Ninamaki had success against Yahya at featherweight doing it. It was a split decision. I wouldn't suggest too many people trying that. So if that is the case, it removes a key element of Simón's attack, and that's going to be a major issue. His only career loss actually came by submission, so we've seen a bit of vulnerability on the ground for him. And in his debut, he struggled with the wrestling of Merab Devashvili. He gave up 6 takedowns on 22 attempts. He gave up 2 against Jackson in his last fight, so there is that factor as well. So it's not like he's had stone-cold takedown defense. He was able to get back up in those fights, get back to his feet, but he can't afford to risk against Yahya. Once Hani gets his hands on you, you are in serious trouble. There is concern that the travel issue could slow Yahya down quicker, and it could impact his cardio even further and not get those 2 rounds in his favor and not get a finish and lose a decision or possibly get stopped late. That's something I'm certainly considering here. But I look at it to see if Devashvili could take Simón down, Yahya can take him down, and he will keep him down. Yahya drags him down, goes to work. I think ultimately Hani probably gets to his back or gets that arm triangle choke from top position, which are 2 of his go-to moves. And my prediction is Hani Yahya to defeat Ricky Simón by submission. In the co-main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's middleweight division as the 6th-ranked Israel, the last stylebender Adesanya, 15-0 undefeated, takes on the former middleweight champion, the former pound-for-pound king, the 15th-ranked fighter in the division, Anderson the Spider Silva, with a current record of 34 wins, 8 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, Adesanya is being billed as the next big thing at middleweight. If he wins this fight, he most likely gets a title shot. He's 4-0 in the UFC. He finished Derek Brunson last time out. He's had that nice escalation of opposition, fighting Tavares before that, fighting Marvin Vettori before that, progressively getting better competition, working towards that title shot. Now, Silva is coming off a controversial decision victory over the aforementioned Derek Brunson. It was his first win in 6 fights. You have to go all the way back, excluding the Nick Diaz no contest, go all the way back to 2012 before you see a victory on Silva's record. It was over Stephan Bonner, and he's been out of action for almost 2 years coming into this fight. So, of course, at this stage of his career, fighting is not something he's doing with regularity. Adesanya in this matchup, 2 inches taller, he'll have a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's the younger fighter by a astounding 14 years. So all the physical advantages favoring Israel. And it's also worth noting, he's fought 6 times, including his entire UFC career since Anderson Silva last competed. So Adesanya is certainly the fresher, newer fighter. This could be the type of passing of the torch fight. A former, elite-level striker, champion, wizard on the feet, and champion Anderson Silva handing it off to a newer, younger version, bigger version of himself. But on the flip side, can Anderson turn back the clock? He didn't look great against Brunson. Maybe the fear of the takedown imposed upon some issues on him. But can he turn back the clock and win a fight that stylistically actually is better for him than what we've seen in the past? That being said, he did struggle with the striking of Michael Bisping, and that was 3 years ago, when he was a young 40-year-old. Now he's 43 years old. Is it just time to move on? He used to be able to clown, do what he wanted in the cage. He made up for it with his defense, with his power, with his tactical edge. Those things, his timing, speed, those things seem to no longer be there. Adesanya offers what Silva used to, minus the potential grappling edge. We haven't seen Adesanya on the ground, scoring submissions and beating guys up on the mat like we saw Anderson Silva have success doing. Adesanya could be a better athlete than what Anderson Silva used to be. He is bigger. He is much bigger. That's certainly a factor. But he could be a better athlete as well. The difference here, I think, is that Adesanya is less willing to clown, goof around. He likes to have fun in the cage, but he's just a younger, better version of Anderson Silva as far as I can tell. This fight will go a long way to proving it, and he still has to get those next levels, but I think he has the potential to do so. He's incredibly confident. That could get in his way a little bit, make him a little overconfident. He was knocked out in his last glory fight back in 2017, and Anderson's the type of guy, if he cracks you, you could be in serious trouble. Anderson's getting a better stylistic matchup than what he's used to. He's a striker not facing a wrestler. He's facing another striker. Is he more focused here? He did ask for a title shot with a win. Is that enough to push him back to the next level? I'm not sure. You can want everything you want. If your physical capabilities aren't there, they're just not there. Unless Anderson shows us something he hasn't shown us in a while, or he can catch Adesanya, I think he's going to struggle with the speed and length that Anderson actually usually has, and that mystique and that aura that Anderson usually has over opponents and kind of lulls them into that defensive shell. I don't think Adesanya is going to go into that situation. Adesanya recognizes the title shot is at hand with a win. Silva's chin isn't what it used to be. He's been out very long. He's a long time. He's slowing down. He needs to stay active as an older fighter, and he's not doing it. I think this is a bad matchup for him, even though people would present it as a great stylistic matchup. He relies too much on timing and movement, and that style doesn't translate well as fighters get older. It's not like if you're a grinder or a wrestler, the power's still there. If you get in top position, you're in a great spot. Anderson doesn't have that. It's not like that Randy Couture getting older. This is a different whole type of aging in mixed martial arts, and my prediction is Israel Adesanya to defeat Anderson Silva by TKO. Moving now to the main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's middleweight division as the reigning champion Robert the Reaper Whittaker, also known affectionately as Bobby Knuckles, 21 wins and 4 losses, fighting out of New Zealand but also calling Australia home, taking on the former Ultimate Fighter winner, the 4th-ranked fighter in the division, Kelvin Gastelum, with a current record of 16 wins, 3 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, this is a middleweight title fight between 2 former welterweights. I love it. Better for their bodies, in better shape as the fight, coming into fight days. It makes more sense. It's probably the future of this sport. Whittaker comes into this bout having won 9 in a row, undefeated at middleweight. Perfect escalation of talent, going from those low-level guys, beating Brad Tavares, Uriah Hall, Rafael Natal, then he gets the win over Derek Brunson, then he takes down Jacare Souza, and then it's back-to-back fights with Yoel Romero. And it's worth noting, this actually is Robert Whittaker's first official title defense, because the last fight with Romero was not a title defense because Romero missed weight. For Gastelum, he is coming off a split decision victory over Jacare Souza in Brazil, a back-and-forth bout. He got the win and gets the opportunity to fight. Prior to that, he knocked out the former champion Michael Bisping. But you go back, he was also submitted by Chris Weidman before that, which Weidman thought would give him a title shot. He had the no-contest knockout of Vitor Belfort. He is 4-1 at middleweight, but it's worth noting 3 of his wins have come over fighters who are now retired. Whittaker, physically 6 feet tall, 3 inches taller than Gastelum. We have a 2-inch reach advantage. Gastelum's actually the younger fighter by a year. Now, is Gastelum, the fact that he's a welterweight coming up, had trouble making weight at welterweight, is physically more geared to that division, but is he going to take away some of Whittaker's advantages he's enjoyed fighting at 185 pounds, as, you know, the speed, cardio, volume, movement, being the more technical fighter? Is he going to take some of those away because of his situation similar to Whittaker's? It's a great question. You know, Gastelum, you know, he hasn't been dominant since coming to middleweight. The loss to Weidman, split decision against Souza, which he found himself in trouble. Versus Whittaker against the elite level guys, he finished Souza. He had 2 decision wins for Romero where he looked impressive. You know, one was a split decision, it was a good fight. He finished Tavares, he finished Brunson. So I would say the edge right there goes to Whittaker as far as what they've looked like. Gastelum, his struggles though at middleweight have come against bigger grapplers. Chris Weidman, Jacare Souza, and even Tim Kennedy. He survived in 2 of those 3 fights and ultimately won, and that's impressed me. But the ground game is not the forte of Whittaker, so it's not like he's going to be able to exploit that the way those guys have. Whittaker, on the flip side of things, has been taken down 7 times. Was taken down 7 times in the 2 Romero fights. Jacare took him down once. He has an 84% takedown defense, but it seems like there's a vulnerability there to be taken down. We haven't seen Gastelum use his wrestling at middleweight. No takedown attempts even. Not even, no completions, but no attempts. At welterweight, we have seen him go to his wrestling, but again, not been a factor at middleweight. We'll see if that changes here. I would rank it a stalemate in that situation as far as the wrestling is concerned. Gastelum might attempt 2 to 3 takedowns. He might even land 1 or 2, but it's going to be a non-factor as the influence of the entire fight because Whittaker's takedown defense and get-up ability is very good. I would say this fight's going to be decided on the feet. That's not really a profound statement. It's just what most people anticipate, so do I. Whittaker has 9 wins by knockout. He stopped Brunson. He stopped Souza. He stopped Tavares. Gastelum has 6 wins by knockout. He stopped Bisping and Belfort early. He had a knockdown against Chris Weidman in the first. He had a knockdown against Jacare Souza in the second. And he stopped Kennedy later in that fight after Kennedy slowed down. He hurt Jacare with a nice 1-2 in round 2. After Jacare, though, was slowing down, not holding his hands up, Gastelum moving forward and pot-shotting, that's where he started having success. Both guys ultimately have power. Whittaker seems more capable of stopping opponents when they're fresh and not diminished or compromised by cardio issues or even damage. So I would give the edge to Whittaker there. But the durability, who's more durable? That also plays a factor here. Gastelum's never been knocked out. I don't even think he's been knocked down in a fight, if I can't recall. Maybe I could be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But for Whittaker, he was stopped by Wonderboy. He was dropped by Romero on 2 different occasions. The big right hand took him down. He had avoided damage up to that point, so it was kind of a one-and-done situation where he got knocked down and dropped. Also in the 5th round, he was taking damage and got hurt in that fight. It dropped as well. Whittaker recovered. And Romero tired, couldn't push, couldn't get him out of there. As I don't think Gastelum's ever been tagged with some big shots. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. But the perceived edge and durability, I would say goes to Kelvin Gastelum. So if you compare that with the power edge going to Whittaker, I would call the striking power, knockout possibility a stalemate. So far, wrestling's a stalemate, power's a stalemate. Let's move on. The volume. 4.8 significant strikes landed per minute for Whittaker compared to 3.86 for Gastelum. So the edge goes to Whittaker there. But Gastelum gets hit almost 1 strike less per minute. So again, the striking volume appears to lie with Whittaker, the advantage there, but there's more to it than that. Whittaker landed 128 and 74 significant strikes in his 2 fights with Romero, 89 versus Rafael Natal. Gastelum over 3 rounds, 53 against Jacare, ultimately was on the mat for some parts of that fight, so that took away some of his volume. He did slow down in round 3 a little bit. His offense wasn't quite there, not as aggressive when dealing with the offensive flow of his opponent when they're pushing forward. His UFC best, 124 significant strikes against Johnny Hendricks. Gastelum, to me, doesn't throw as much volume per round as Whittaker. He stays close, and then he finds a big round and really ups his totals. Round 5 could be an issue in this type of fight where if he can't land the volume there, it could be a deciding factor. Whittaker throws more kicks overall. Gastelum relies on his hands, which adds to the reach advantage for Whittaker, keeps Gastelum out of range. It lessens his volume, lessens his impact, and forces him to move more, which adds to the cardio edge for Whittaker a little bit. Overall, the consistent volume edge appears to lie with the champion. Unless Gastelum gets a stop or hurts him significantly on multiple occasions, Whittaker's volume per round should give him the edge overall. Cardio is a big factor as well in this fight. We'll see who it lies with. Whittaker, he's coming off back-to-back 5-round fights. That's massive. He landed more strikes in round 5 at UFC 231. That was his biggest output. At UFC 225, he landed more in round 4. So he can dig deep and land more in later rounds. For Gastelum, his only 5-round fight was against Neil Magny, which he lost. In round 3, he landed 22 significant strikes against Jacare Souza, 46 in round 3 against Johnny Hendricks, and against Magny in round 4, he landed 10. And in round 5, he landed 13. So the numbers would suggest Whittaker's more apt to put up bigger volume deeper into fights. So the cardio edge is very close. From what I can see, Gastelum tends to pace himself a little bit more, looking for openings to engage when his opponents slow down, and Whittaker pushes harder and can carry it deeper. He's also fighting at home, and that west to east travel factor could be an issue for Gastelum, especially if this turns into a war of attrition. In summary, if you look at everything here, the wrestling edge is even. The power edge goes to Whittaker, but the durability edge goes to Gastelum. The volume I certainly give to Whittaker. The striking variety I give to Whittaker because of his kicking arsenal. Cardio slightly to Whittaker because it's close, but then the home field advantage tips that a little further in favor of the champion. 5-round experience also tips that further in favor of the champion. For Kelvin Gastelum, he will need to land a big shot and hurt him. If he can't get the finish, he needs an uptick in his overall output over at least 3 rounds from his normal offense. He can't sit back and let Whittaker pile up damage. He will get behind, he could get hurt, and he could get finished. To me, this fight comes down to Whittaker sitting on the outside, utilizing his kicks, keeping Gastelum on his back foot with a steady flow, more consistent flow of output, moving in and out with his boxing, and working and outworking him over 5 rounds. My prediction is Robert Whittaker to defeat Kelvin Gastelum to retain his middleweight title. I have Whittaker doing it by decision. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 234. As per usual, all of my preliminary picks are available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so stop by and check them out. My bet packs will also be available. There's, some people are looking at this saying, hey, there's a ton of really rough lines in this card. I will do my best to find something that makes this profitable. We'll see what we can come up with. Follow me on KO_predictions. Check out my new website. Follow me on YouTube as well. You can subscribe to get the videos as soon as they come out. Lots of content showing up on my website as well. Some hockey bets. We had the NFL, the Super Bowl, which was successful. We'll see how things go. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys here very soon.